Are you worried that the upcoming Star Wars TV show, The Acolytes, is going to be garbage? Well, first and foremost, why would you possibly be worried about that? It's only the current year Star Wars after all. Well, don't you fear, because even if you are a difficult-to-please original fan who might be seeming unpleasable, in fact, don't worry. There will in fact be a sprinkling of dialogue, like "May the Force be with you." Oh, I have a bad feeling about this. This entire article here is absolute gold. So here we have, what was his name again? Weinstein's ex-assistant. You know, the man who was famous for doing things to potted plants and aspiring actresses. His former assistant here is making a Star Wars show, whom she claims to have been a fan of her entire life. Now, I'm doubting that a little bit, seeing as certain things we're going to look at later on in the article, but let's get going here, shall we? Headland's show, The Acolyte, will debut on Disney Plus on June the 4th, costing roughly $180 million for 8 episodes. Because you simply cannot make entertainment these days without it costing literally the universe. And taking 4 years to make it, it attempts 2 feats at once. Pleasing old-school Star Wars fans who can seem unpleasable. You know what? Here's the thing. I've often seen this accusation that fans of certain things can be difficult to please. Actually, no. In fact, it is the exact opposite. Look at fans of Creative Assembly's Total War, or fans of Warhammer, etc. By and large, so long as you are at least giving them a little bit, so long as you are giving them the pinky finger, they will leap all over it and thank you furiously for it. It is only when you repeatedly and actively insult them over a course of a 10-year period that you're really starting to see the backlash happening, and, well, that is in essence what Disney Wars has been doing now. Whilst telling an entirely new... there you go. There you have it. It's like, how can I please the Star Wars fans? Well, I don't know, what kind of story are you trying to tell? Is it a Star Wars story? No, it's an entirely new story. Alright, is it focusing on, well, War in the Stars at least? No, it requires no prior knowledge of Star Wars whatsoever. So it doesn't really have anything to do with Star Wars then. What's the conflict? Like, why are there space wizards at war now? Well, you see, there are women and people of color. Fantastic. Like, it's so hard to please these damned Star Wars fans, which is why we're making a story that requires no knowledge of Star Wars, that is entirely new, and its primary focus is gender and skin color. I just don't understand why these damned Star Wars fans don't eat this shit up. And again, for the faithful, The Acolyte serves up scats of Jedi, a franchise fundamental that the other live-action Star Wars TV shows have depicted sparingly or not at all. I would argue that they've depicted them too frequently as it is, but okay. The opening scene in The Acolyte takes place in an eatery crowded with colourful aliens, a callback to the Mos Eisley cantina from the first Star Wars movie in 1977, which is exactly the same as this too, a sprinkling of dialogue, like "May the Force be with you." It's like, okay, I'm going to tell you a story that has nothing to do with Star Wars, that has no connection to Star Wars, and that is about gender and race, but don't worry, I'm going to use the words you like, and occasionally I'm going to reference some other things you used to like. Aren't you happy? No, not really. So the definition of difficult to please is they will not be satisfied by the meagerest of platitudes. I see. At the same time, The Acolyte embraces what some people call new Star Wars. An era defined by diversity and expansion beyond the Skywalker saga, which started with Disney's purchase of the franchise in 2012, the year that Satan descended upon Earth. Amandra Stenberg starts as a dreadlock warrior, great, who has a complicated relationship with the Jedi Master played by Lee Jung-jae from Squid Game in his first English-speaking role. Fantastic. I hope he speaks English, I guess. Jodie Turner-Smith, Queen of Slim, plays the lesbian leader of a Regal Coven of witches. Of course she does. The lesbian leader of a Regal Coven of witches. A Star Wars story. With the Filipino-Canadian actor Manny Trignito appears as a shadowy trader in one of her most action-oriented roles since The Matrix. Carrie-Anne Moss plays a steely Jedi Master named Indira. Doesn't that just make you... doesn't that just make... You know, actually, you know what? I was about to ask, doesn't that just make you deeply interested? You know what? If this was the 1980s and I was expecting some bow wow music in the background, the leader of a regal coven of lesbian witches, that might intrigue my interests. But in a Star Wars movie, less appealing and probably less erotic, I fear. The Acolyte also breaks new ground behind the camera, of course it does. While women have directed episodes of shows like The Mandalorian and Obi-Wan Kenobi, much to the detriment of both, Headland43 is the first to create a Star Wars series. It's like working on a razor's edge, she said during a Zoom interview, pushing her oversized glasses higher on her nose. Thank you for pointing that out. You're thinking, this is what people want from Star Wars, this is what people don't want, it can mess with your head. During the creative process, she continued, I had to give myself the forgiveness as an artist to fall off the razor. As long as I got back up, that was a promise to myself. See, this is why I don't think you're actually a fan. Because if you're a fan, well, you know what people want from Star Wars. In fact, that is likely what you want from Star Wars yourself because you like Star Wars. And yet, then you go, well, what people don't want from Star Wars is a focus on sexuality, on race, and on gender. But, since I am not a fan, I am going to give myself the artistic license to ignore the fact that my fans are going to hate that, and just shove it in there anyway, so long as I occasionally, give them a platitude, like, here's a regal coven of witches, maybe the Force be with you. See, now I can't do the thing, now I can't do the Spock thing, damn it. God. Seriously. If you are actually a fan of these things, you do not need to force yourself to create something that is within the thing. You don't have to be made to make a Star Wars product if you are someone who likes Star Wars. It'll come as the most natural thing in the world. If, however, you are an ideologically motivated political activist, then yes, it might indeed feel like dancing on a razor's blade to try and appease someone who wants something other than socialist politics in the year 2024. From the second that a new Star Wars project comes into public view, Disney announced The Acolyte 2020, fans claw for information and pick apart what they find. It's part of what makes Star Wars so powerful. People care, but the attention also creates problems. See, this is the thing again. In any other universe, the idea that you have instant interest in anything you create would be the greatest blessing ever. But when you are actually actively trying to sneak your politics past the crowd, then, well, active interest is a bad thing, because they might pick up on your activism. Rumours can solidify into facts. Some Star Wars obsessive, for instance, have worried that Headland's show breaks canon or tinkers with already established storylines in the franchise, the ultimate Star Wars crime it does not. Why? Because, well, they put it at a point where there is no law so they can make everything up. And that can still break canon, mind you, if you simply invent an entirely new universal setting and then go, okay, you seem to have undermined everything that comes thereafter. As apparently there is a secret killer that's killing Jedi. Oh, by the way, there's also a lightsaber whip, which is actually in canon. It's still retarded even though it is in canon, but that is actually a thing. Leslie wanted this show to be accessible. No homework needed before watching. See, That is not a good thing. This is not a positive thing. If you entered into an established setting and you need have no knowledge at all about that setting, you are doing something wrong. You haven't created a Star Wars movie if there is no necessary knowledge of Star Wars to get into it. A baseline understanding of the setting is necessary and should be considered necessary to get into something. Now, sure, teach the viewers whilst you're making the show, give them a little bit of an exposition dump here and there, absolutely, but you do need to expect someone entering into an established setting to have the barest basic minimum understanding of it. Otherwise, you will sacrifice the setting in order to please someone who is not interested in it. You will be sacrificing people who have already invested into it in favor of people who hold no investment into it. This is how you degrade a setting. The Ghanaian American writer, I love how every person we've talked about so far has been described with either their gender or their nationality, as if we're living in 1940s Germany. It's very important to know the race credentials of the people we're talking about. Headland added Bio to the writing team for The Acolyte, specifically because Bio was not a Star Wars devotee. She asked me what I knew about Star Wars, and my answer was, Harrison Ford runs around space with a giant dog. Bio recalled laughing and as they said, "You're hired." This is why I said this article is gold, because, I mean, if you... At this point, I don't think we need... You know what? Here's the thing. On yesterday's D&D turned ArchCast, we had a brief discussion about whether or not people are ruining entertainment franchises because they are actively malicious, or because they are simply really bad at it, but they still actually really do care about the franchise. This is evidence towards the malice department, where the person making the show is like, hey, I'm making a Star Wars show. What do you know about Star Wars? Harrison Ford and a giant dog. Hired. No, fired. Rejected immediately. You have no idea what you're doing. How can I trust you to make Star Wars anything if you have no connection to Star Wars? Hey. The first Acolyte trailer, released in March, racked up 51.3 million views in its first 24 hours, a record for the live-action Star Wars show, including The Mandalorian. According to Lucasfilm sneak peek, Acolyte footage released in theaters early in May highlighted the show's unique martial arts sequences. Fan sites instantly deemed the fighting style forceful. Well, I don't know about that. I noticed you don't mention the dislike of that trailer, which I'm assuming is deeply in the negative. But a loud, primordial part of Star Wars fandom have pushed back in a predictable fashion. There it is. See, I was wondering, why don't you mention the dislikes? It's because we're getting to it now. See, this is how we know we're having effect, because every article talking about any entertainment entity now needs to dedicate like half of it talking about the fan backlash to you producing yet another non-Star Wars thing. Why are there so many women, girls, and minor characters increasingly dominating ranks of Jedi? Reads a comment on the Acolyte trailer with others expressing similar worldview. Well, why is it? You've already told us it's because of your real-life political views. You told us earlier in the article that you are focusing on diversity. You are focusing on gender, race, and ethnicity. This is what you are doing here, and people are asking why. Well, why are you doing it? Explain that, because you are already saying you are doing it, so why are you doing it? It's because you're an ideologically motivated leftist, but I'd like you to say it. It's a version of the same misogyny and racism that greeted Rey and the female Jedi, blah 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 blah. And yes, put a chick in it, make her lame and gay. Correct. Because again, you the writer, state that you are adding in diversity. You are making that a selling point to your side, and when people ask you, why are you doing this? You have no response other than going, racist. We know what you're doing. You're not being very stealthy about it. You could maybe get away with not answering 10 years ago, but at this point, everyone knows why. It's because you're a goddamn communist. Most fans have nicknamed Headland's shows The Acolyte. In a brief telephone interview, Kennedy's support for The Acolyte was steadfast. "My belief is that storytelling does not need to be representative of all people. That is an easy decision for me." Really now? That's a very interesting turn, Kennedy. And hey, we know what you mean when you say does not need to be representative of all people. You mean does not need to be representative of white men, is what you mean. Please be more forward with your misogyny, or misandry in this case. Operating with operating within these gigantic franchises, now with social media and the level of expectation, it's terrifying. Kennedy continued, "I think Leslie has struggled a little bit with it. I think a lot of the women who step in Star Wars struggle with this a bit more because of the fan base being so male-dominated. They sometimes get attacked in ways that can be quite personal." Again, nonsense. Any person who has been a member of any geekdom culture back in the day will know that a woman entering into that geekdom is not only accepted, it is celebrated. Females are the most precious unicorns in a geekdom, because there weren't a whole lot of them back in the day. Now that it's become popular, however, we are looking at a lot of people who happen to be of the correct gender, but who have no interest in the thing coming in and going, "Hey there, I'm totally a fan of this Star Wars Trekkie thing. Can I be the person who decides what this looks like?" And we used to say yes, much to our regret, but no longer. As a fan myself, lying through her teeth, I know how frustrating some Star Wars storytelling in the past has been, Headland said, declining to cite specific examples. "I felt it myself." See, this is again why we know that it's starting to turn in the opposite direction, because normally she would simply have said, "Oh, those racists on the internet," but now there is an expectation that she at least not overtly and immediately attack the audience. You've got to be circumspect about it. It's okay that it doesn't represent everyone, white men, but I can't say that anymore because we've gotten a little bit too far down the progressive line. She followed up with a text message. "I stand by my empathy for Star Wars fans," she wrote, "but I want to be clear, anyone who engaged in bigoted racism and hate speech, I don't consider a fan." That's fine, I don't consider you a fan either. Star Wars projects are known for personal or idiosyncratic filmmaking. The production and marketing budgets are simply too high. The storytelling must appeal to the widest possible audience to make the numbers work. Bullshit! Appealing to everyone doesn't make the numbers work, as Disney has demonstrated again and again. Appealing to the maximum number of people outside of the audience you wish to sell the product to results in less sales, not more. As we've again seen with Disney Wars. The original 3 Rey movies, they did earn back their budget, but they absolutely murdered the long-term potential of Star Wars. It has taken the most profitable franchise practically in history and reduced it to a third-rate franchise who can't even move its goddamn plushies. Again, the wider audience only exists as an extension of your core audience. If your core audience is not pleased, nobody else will be, because your core audience will tear it down. Again, Furiosa, when you ignore your core audience and you appeal to people who are not your fans, what are they going to do? They have no frame of reference, so what are they going to go to? Okay, they're going to go on YouTube and they're going to see a trailer and go like, wow, okay, cool. Oh, Jesus, that's a lot of downvotes. Okay, I'm not interested anymore. They're going to go to a review site and it's like, oh, wow, this looks cool, that Star Wars thingy. Overwhelmingly negative, aye. That is what happens. You do not gain new fans by pissing off your old ones. However, if you please your old fans, guess who's going to spread the word about that? Guess who is going to be the most vociferously active and going, hey, watch this thing, watch this thing. That is how this became popular in the first place. Smaller, more insular fandom communities who loved a thing went around to everyone. Like, hey, do you want to try this thing? Want to try Warhammer? Let me tell you about the lore of Warhammer. That's how it becomes popular, not by aiming at the audience who are not actually interested. Hey. Rian Johnson, director of Last Jedi, that he didn't even try to put his own stamp on the franchise. It would be bad news if you came into this saying, how do I make this mine, he said. Well, at least he's saying the right thing. Kennedy, however, pushed Headland to do just that with The Acolyte. You've written a great Star Wars show, Kennedy told in 2019, in response to early scripts, and now go write as Leslie Headland's show. These people do not like money or success. Kennedy had read one of Headland's plays, Cult of Low, which explores a complicated relationship between siblings. It's about her personal experience, Kennedy said. A complicated relationship between siblings. Good. Wonderful. And it was done so well and incredibly emotional. I remember reading that and saying, Leslie, this is exactly what you should tap into as you write this story for us. What? Oh, actually, you know what? A complicated relationship between siblings? That sounds like the first Star Wars movie. So you know what? Well, maybe. Explaining exactly how Headland took Kennedy's advice would spoil a major plot in Acolyte. Uh-oh. Let's just say that Headland heightened a clash between characters. I have a strained relationship with my younger sister, and I feel like one of the reasons it is strained is that we both see each other as the bad guy. Oh goody. So a core portion of the Acolyte is going to be your own complicated family relationships. How very Star Wars of you. And if I was going to tell a story about bad guys, it seemed to me that the place to start should be a familial relationship, where one person is adamantly convinced of her correctness and the other person is adamantly convinced of her correctness. Fantastic. We don't speak, Heather added. I think they'll still be a surprise to her. Great. Star Wars will be used as an arena to carry out this person's personal, familial drama. Ideal. She wouldn't say anything more on the topic, except to emphasize that she has a good relationship with her other sister, who helped her make a visual presentation that Headland used to pitch the Acolyte to Lucasfilm. Headland described her concept in the meeting as Frozen meets Kill Bill. Kennedy bought it on the spot. But what about the Star Wars part, I say? Sternberg, the show's star, said Leslie really is driven by emotion and heart relationships, so even though our show is within the Star Wars universe and set in outer space in a galaxy far, far away, it's really a family drama. Yeah, you don't need to convince me. I've already realized this. What she lacked in spirit, she made of Star Wars geekdom. Headland became a Star Wars superfan as a teenager. It was an apocalyptic period of her life, or at least it felt that way. I had no friends, recall. I ate my lunch in the bathroom. I don't know if I believe you. She found solace among misfits in George Lucas' space operas, discovering the books like Timothy Zane's Heir to the Empire. And there goes like the geekdom cred. And you know, again, I just don't believe you. I just don't. If truly Star Wars was your only saving grace, if you were in a situation where you had no friends, and believe you me, as a female in a geekdom space back in the day, you probably would have, honestly. You would just then create a Star Wars story. If you truly were feeling indebted to Star Wars as something that brought you through a dark period in your life, odds are you would like to write a love letter to that, and yet you are not. In fact, there was barely any mention of anything Star Wars in this entire article. I think the closest we get is lightsaber whip. And that's about it. For the rest of it, we are talking about gender, we are talking about family drama, we are talking about sexuality, and we are talking about race. And Star Wars is a long forgotten tertiary priority that determines nothing more than the general aesthetical vibe of the show. And occasionally, they'll sprinkle in a "May the Force be with you," hoping that this simple platitude will somehow appease the people who actually do give a shit about it. Somehow, I don't think it's gonna work out this time either. Call me a blithe old cynic, but with so many failed Star Wars shows already, somehow I doubt doing the exact same thing again is really going to result in that much different of an outcome. I guess we'll have to wait and see. Till next time, I have been Arch. Thank you all very much for watching, and I do hope to see you all again soon. Till then, have a good day.